So today I'm going to show you some palette paper. So palette paper is disposable sheets that you can use to mix your paint on, and then you can just toss it away at the end. So it comes generally in pads. I happen to have 3 right now, and I thought, well, since I have 3 right now, because 2 of them are almost empty, it's a great time to be able to show you kind of what's similar, what's different, and if you're trying to decide is it worth spending the more money or less money. So I have 3 Strathmore palette paper, Canson Excel palette paper, and a Jack Richardson, the Grey Matters version. So first let's talk about what they are. So they are literally just a pad of palette paper, and it is shiny on one side so that your paint will not seep through, and then the other side is, it doesn't really matter what it's made of, it just feels more like almost like wax paper, but this side is very shiny and smooth, and they work really fantastic to just be able to mix and obviously just throw it away. Obviously not great for the environment for that reason. So while I do have 3 and I do use them somewhat regularly, when I'm at home and I'm not in a rush or anything like that, I will use a different type of palette. And I use these a lot if I'm traveling and I'm taking my paints with me, because this is a lot smaller of a footprint to be able to just toss in my bag. So these 2, the Strathmore and the Canson, honestly, they look, other than the cover, they look exactly the same. Now on the inside, I'm down to the very last sheet of the Strathmore. So the Canson looks whiter, but I don't think they're actually any different. It's just this one doesn't have any more white sheets behind it. It has the cardboard. So if you're choosing between the Canson and the Strathmore and you see one is cheaper, just go with the cheaper one because they seem exactly the same. And they have a nice little feature that they have like this gummed end so that both sides are actually, like here and here, are actually bound so that when you're mixing you don't have your paper kind of flipping up. And I've always done all my mixing on, like when it's in the pad. Sometimes you get a little bit of paint kind of on the edges, but that's no big deal, because if you pull it off the pad, you're going to have this little piece of paper that wants to kind of float around, and that's going to be really annoying. This one has a couple little spots of paint, but essentially, oh, and I ripped it on the end because this has been sitting on my shelf and kind of moved around a little bit for the past few months. But yeah, exactly the same. Nice, easy, and both of these are really cheap price. The Jack Richardson, this is a little bit more higher end, and that's because it's from the Grey Matters line, and this one actually kept, so you can see, it is gray, and gray is nice because you're better able to see your values and the color that you're mixing. So I've left some paints that I had mixed from, I don't know, painting a while back, just so I could show that, and that's really nice compared to the white. Some people, they struggle with getting like a really good value match when they're painting on the white. So just a nice neutral gray. This is really nice to work on. Weirdly, even though this is more expensive and they put a little bit more thought, I guess, from, you know, how artists would actually use something, because they are using the gray, they don't have it bound at this end, so it's only bound at the one end. It hasn't been a huge issue, but I wish they would bind it at this end, because every once in a while, especially when you don't have any paint and you're just starting to use it, it can kind of be a little bit too light on this end and kind of flip up just a little. Hasn't been a huge deal, but it is more expensive. Not as easy to get as the Strathmore and the Canson. Strathmore and Canson, almost any art store has it. Even some craft stores sometimes have them, but this Grey Matters, the Jack Richardson, a little harder to get. The other thing too is the Jack Richardson, I believe it only has, I want to say, oh no, it has 50 sheets, whereas the Strathmore and the Canson, they both have 40. So while they are a little bit less expensive, there is an extra, I think 20%. My math is right, which it probably isn't. And just one last note, depending what you're using to mix, you might have more success or less success. I have used them to mix both acrylics and gouache Acrylics works fantastic. These are acrylics. So you can mix and it works normally. I've also used it for gouache, mixing gouache, and the gouache kind of beads up. Still, it is usable. It's just a little bit, you don't see what you're mixing quite as easily. So, and I expect it doesn't work great for watercolors either. The gouache that I've used is the more traditional gouache that is water soluble again, so it's probably closer to a watercolor than an acrylic. I haven't tried the acrylic gouaches. They might mix really nicely on these. And I've heard it's very good for mixing oils, but I haven't done that myself. So if you're interested in these, if you find value in using the gray background, it's really, really nice. But if you're just wanting just some disposable palette paper, it doesn't matter if it's white background, just go with whichever cheaper one you find, because they're the same. They work just as well. And then, yeah, such a snap to clean things up. I generally use it if I'm doing a painting where I'm going to fill this up and then need to keep going really, really quickly. So I just rip it and can move to the next one. Or if I'm doing several paintings in a row and cleaning up my palette in between is kind of annoying, that's kind of my use for it. And then, like I said before, if I'm traveling, because it's a pretty small footprint. But if I'm at home and I have more time to clean up my palette, not a huge rush in between paintings or anything like that, then I use a different type of palette that isn't disposable, just because it is a bit wasteful, to be honest, to use these.